Hello everyone and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Laura Rogers and I have Joelle Jobson here in the little window. And our topic today on Power Hour is content approval in SharePoint. And this is something that's been around forever in SharePoint, but we're going to go ahead and do a recap of it. So you all voted. You all vote every week before we do Power Hour. I sent out a newsletter, and so yeah, it was overwhelming. If you're new to Power Hour, this is a weekly show we do Wednesdays at 11 Central, and it's live, so you never know what's going to happen. We have a live chat going on. We chat over in Teams, so wherever you are, wherever you're watching this, there's going to be a link down below to fill out the form to join for the first time. And then once we invite you, then you're invited in Teams, and you just need to toggle over to our tenant in Teams to join every week. And in the chat, I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like real quick. In the chat, we have this Teams, we have this Power Hour team, and we go to the general channel, and then in post, this is where we have some resources. If you go to the little I, you'll be able to see this pinned post that I always have with some resources about whatever our topic is. So our topic's content approval. And then there will be a tab with today's date on it. And you'll be able to open up, use this little conversation button to open up the chat. So you can push play and watch the video at the same time as you're chatting with us. So there's our lively conversation. So it's fun because you all can ask questions and have a discussion about whatever our topic is. So I'll just a little bit more about content approval. Again, this is a setting that has been there forever in all lists and libraries in SharePoint. And it's just the very, very basic way of having an approval concept that has pretty much no settings. The only setting is that you turn it on or off. So when it comes to building approval processes, this is sort of the least common denominator. If you want to have something super simple but not customizable at all, this is what you can turn on. So in this Power Hour, we'll be demonstrating that. And I'm going to be demonstrating it in our little, in our tenant that we're doing the chat in. So I even put a link over in the posts tab in Teams straight to that travel request list if you are not sure how to get over to SharePoint from within that team. Since you all are guests in my tenant, you all can use SharePoint too. So we're using the travel request list, and I'm going to turn on content approval in there, and then you all can submit travel requests and we can test it out and see, and kind of show you how the setting works and what it does and what it doesn't do. And we're going to talk about Power Automate and how you can create a flow that will run in conjunction with the content approval setting in SharePoint, so that so you can have a little kind of a nicer approval interface and a little bit more of an advanced approval and have it tie into that content approval setting. So here, I'll go ahead and share my desktop, and I've got, here's the travel request list. So again, this setting exists in every list and library. So these are also referred to as Microsoft Lists. A Microsoft list and a SharePoint list are the exact same thing. So the way I created this, just real quick, is that one way to do it, there are several different ways to create the list, is I was on the home page of the SharePoint site. You could go to the waffle menu in Microsoft 365 and go to lists there. I like to just go to whatever site that I want the list on. Go new, choose list. And this one, I chose the travel request list. So that is what I base this template off of. So I'll go ahead and go back to my travel requests. And there was a Boolean column in this list called approved, and it was just a yes or no. It was a checkbox. So I went ahead and deleted that column because I'm turning on content approval. So that kind of gives you that same concept anyway. So I feel like I would be duplicating the concept of something being approved or not. if I had that default column that was in there plus turning on content approval. So I don't feel like you would need both. So let's take a look at where that setting is. You go to your list settings, and it's in a weird place. It's in versioning settings. So on versioning settings, this is where I think I need to, let me turn up my zoom on my browser a little bit there. Require content approval for submitted items. And you just change it to yes. So once you change it to yes, then you'll have some extra settings down here to pay attention to. So who should see draft items in this list? So draft items means items that have not been approved yet. So this is if you want everyone who can see anything in this list to also see the items that haven't been approved yet, then you can say any user who can read. If you have some users maybe that you have given permission to read this list and they can't edit it, but you also have different users who have the ability to edit items in this list, you can say, well, I only want the users who can edit items to be able to see those items that haven't been approved yet. Or my favorite setting here is only users who can approve items and the author of the item. So this is ensuring that people visiting your list or library are not going to see things that haven't been approved. They're only going to see things that just have a status of approved. So that's the setting that makes the most sense to me. So I'll go ahead and click OK. So now that I've turned on content approval, I'll go back up to my list. And it's going to, you all can add items in here now, by the way. So go ahead and now that I've turned on content approval, when you all submit your travel requests, it's going to show them as pending approval. So let me show you another extra thing that I like to do in lists that I did already before I start looking at the content approval columns, is I went to permissions. And by default, on all of your lists and libraries, this is important, and you know I've ranted about this for like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. The edit permission level is the default for members. The edit permission level lets people edit and manage the whole list, all the settings, all the views and everything, and that lets everyone on your site do that by default. So I already stopped inheriting permissions on this list and changed the members group to only have contribute and not edit, because I want them to be able to add, edit, and delete items in the list, but I don't want all of them managing the list. Does that make sense? So hopefully you all being aware of that, you'll know that just again, by default, every single list and library, all the people you add as members to your site, they can manage the whole, they can delete entire lists and libraries and manage all the settings. So I've already turned that off. So now I'm going to go back up in the breadcrumb trail to my list, and let's look at what it's done. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't like having to scroll left and right, so I'm going to hide some columns here about the airfare, travel, blah, blah, blah. There. All right. So I've got approval status. So as soon as you turn on content approval, you're going to end up with this approval status column. And by default, when you turn on content approval, if you've already got items in your list, they're going to already show as approved. So from now on, though, if anyone creates a new item or edits an item, it's going to show as pending. So I'll go ahead and edit my item here, my trip to Mobile. And I'm going to just added some text real quick, and I'm going to save it. So now that I've edited something, it shows as pending, and anyone that adds new items, they're going to show as pending as well. Let me make sure you all have the link to that. There. Oh, let me move that over here so I can see what's going on. Okay. All right. So there you can see that I have a couple. Somebody's going to Tasmania. Thanks, Amanda. And I have a couple of pending items here. So my role is that I'm an owner, and owners have full control. They can see everything and do everything in all the lists and libraries. Again, just another permissions rant is it is a best practice to only have a couple of owners of any given site. You don't want to have like 10 or 15 owners. I usually just do like 2, maybe 3 or 4, but usually just 2. Anyway, so because those people are going to be able to change all the settings and everything. So now that they're pending, even when I, the admin, add something or edit something, it still shows as pending. So I've logged in as a different user now, so you can see. So I've got, this is before, see all the items that were before I turned on content approval are showing. So this is, I'm logged in as an external user, just like you all. And this is what I see. So I'm just kind of reiterating what I see, what I'm going to see as an external user. I'm going to only see the things that have been approved. So like this trip to Mobile, I edited it a second ago and I put going to the beach and Gulf Shores. And so since I haven't approved that change yet, all the regular users are only seeing the things that are approved. So that's the view that they're going to get. You also have, when you turn on content approval, it gives you a couple of new views. So end users, when they are looking to see what the status is of things that they've submitted, they can go to the view called My Submissions. So that is going to show the currently logged in user their items that they have created, basically. So these are my own items, and I can see that the approval status is approved. See, it says My Submissions. And then it's also got another view that it creates, and it's called Approve Reject Items. Now, Approve Reject Items is not going to be the most useful for all the end users who are just looking at and only seeing all the approved items, because they're going to see it grouped, but they're only going to see the approved items anyway. So it doesn't hurt that they can get to the view, but it's still only going to show them approved items. So My Submissions is where that could be helpful to show them things that that they have submitted. Now, by default, just turning on this setting, no notifications go to anybody. Nobody knows if somebody has submitted something that needs to be approved. So what you can do is turn on alerts. So the people that you want to be able to know when things have been submitted, who need to be able to respond and go approve things, that would be, so this is me, the admin, and this is just plain old SharePoint alerts. I can go choose Alert Me. And this is, maybe I want to get notified for all changes. So it's telling me who am I sending the alert to. And I'll just call the alert title Travel Request to Approve. And if I'm creating this alert and there are other admins on this site that I also want them to be notified, I can also put their names in here too. So you can add, if you're an admin owner and you're creating an alert, it lets you add multiple people here. So I'm going to be alert about everything. Send me alert when anything changes. And do I want it immediately or when, or do I want a daily or weekly summary? I'll just say immediately. So now as soon as I create an alert, it's actually going to send me an email and let me know that I just created alert. And then as soon as people start submitting things, it's going to be sending me emails. So then what about the people that are submitting things? How do they know when something's been approved? Now this is kind of a lot of work, so I'm not sure how feasible if people will even want to do this, but what you can do is you can go create an alert, and you can say you have to have a filtered view basically. So let me see if my submissions is a filtered view. Oh, I can't edit my submissions. Let's see, let me go back to the alert. So someone else changes an item created by me, or someone else changes an item last modified by me. Those are things that will let that logged in user know about their own things having an action taken on them and being approved. So now what does it look like when you approve something? So now I can see that I've got a few pending things. So this is a grouped view that's showing the things that were approved, pending or approved or rejected. So I'm going to say, let's see, Tasmania, and go to approve reject. Now, approve reject, since my screen has been expanded and my zoom has been expanded, approve reject would usually show actually across this toolbar, but it's just kind of truncated everything because my screen size is so big. So I'm going to click an item, and I can click approve or reject right here. There are a couple of different places I can do this. I'm going to say nope. But I can also, if you want to go down the rabbit hole of this little menu right here, you can go to more here and go to approve reject, which is kind of a pain. And you can make a comment if you like. Now, where does the comment go? So the comment, it goes to a column that also exists on this approve reject items view that's called approver comments. So I'm going to go ahead and just go back to my all items view, and I'm going to add that approver comments column to the view so it's more obvious so everybody can see it. And you can add this to any view. Approver comments, where is it? Am I blind? I don't see it. That's weird. Maybe, oh, you know what? Some columns, when you're editing your view, they don't show it in that modern thing for some reason. Let's see. Yeah, approver comments. There it is. So I'm just going to get rid of a couple more columns. Again, I don't want to have to scroll right and left. And my resolution's so big now. Okay, so now I've got my approval status, approver comments. So I approved something. I said, yep, rejected. Let's go ahead and see if I can do some in bulk. Pending, pending, pending. And go to approve, reject. So I can select a bunch of them at once and say, I'll just say all good. And there you go. So that is super basic content approval. That's what it does, just out of the box. You just turn it on and you decide who can see the items. And then once a decision has been made, once they've actually been approved, then I can go in and just go look at it as that user. This is that end user. Once they're approved, then they'll be able to see those items. Notice that they don't see the one that I rejected here. So again, that's what the end user experience is versus the approver experience. Now, how do you determine who the approvers are? So that's going to be a permission thing. So let's go ahead and go into and look at permissions. So I'm going to go to the home page of my site. Does anybody use this content approval in the real world? Let me know in the chat what you think about that. And if it's super basic. So usually as soon as people see an approval process, they want to change things about it. And then immediately content approval is out the window, right, Joelle? You just like, oh, well, you can't change this or that or the email verbiage or anything. No, well, okay, let's move on and do something more complicated. So that's why I rarely see people using it. But it's a good basic thing to have on document libraries too, just for documents needing to be approved. All right, so let's go ahead and go to site permissions, and go to advanced permission settings. And I'm going to go to permission levels here. And again, by default, owners have full control, so they can approve things. But what if you want to create just a special group of people and you want those people to be the ones that can approve? That's possible. So usually when I am doing something custom with permissions, I just take an existing permission level and I just create a copy of it. They don't let you edit the existing permission levels. Just you could see it was kind of grayed out, but I can copy it, and I'm going to create a new one, and I'll call it contribute and approve. So I'll leave all the checkboxes in here that we had for contributors, but I'll just add the approve items checkbox. So now I can, if I want to, let's go back to, they kind of obfuscate this, the way you can get back to SharePoint groups, because they don't want you creating SharePoint groups. I don't know why. But you can, if you want to have just a special group of people that are not site owners and not members, but just people that you want to be able to approve these travel requests, then that would be a good reason to create a SharePoint group. So I've got to go find the SharePoint groups though, because it's all hidden. Hold on, go. Isn't that crazy how, like, it's not even in the menu anymore, Joelle. It's just people in groups that used to be in site settings. Site permissions, advanced permission settings. I can go click on an existing group into the SharePoint group. So I'll go create a new group and I'll call it Travel Approvers. And usually I like to make the owners group the owner of any group that I create. So this site is called Power Hour Owners. There we go. So because it'll put yourself as the owner of the group when you create a new group, but usually you might want other people to help you manage that list of people. So I'll just say who can view the membership. Everyone. Group owner is the whole owners group. And I don't need to check any of these boxes. I don't want to give them a site-wide permission to anything. I just want to go to that one specific list, travel request, and I want to give whoever's in that. So I didn't add anybody to the group. It doesn't matter. But I want to put people in the group and then give that group this special permission level on the list. So I go grant permissions, and I'll call it travel, and I'll look for travel approvers. And I don't need to send them invitation, but I want to give them this special permission level that I created called contribute and approve. So then now travel approvers can do that just on that one list. All right, so now let me go back to, how did I get to that list? I'll go back to that list, site permissions, advanced permissions, go to any group in here, and then on the left side, that's where you can get to groups, and I can see this group I created, and I'm going to put my other account. This is my external account. I know this is kind of confusing, but this is my external account that I was logging into as a visitor. So when I was demonstrating a second ago how to be a visitor. So I don't need to send an email invitation, but now I've added that other me as an approver. So now when let's go back to the list, and I want to be logged in as the other me, and I can see a rejected item in here. So that means I can see the things that approvers can see, and I'll just double check this by testing it and saying just creating a test item, just so because it'll say pending. And of course I created it as the guest user, so that doesn't really help me much. I'll create it as me, as the admin. Test as admin. This is my admin account. Now I can see that it's pending, and now my account that I just gave the contribute and approve permission now can see things that are pending and rejected. All right, any questions about that? Let's see. All right. Oh, okay. So you all are saying you use Power Automate approval. So this is different. So this concept you can't do with Power Automate alone. So this is where I'm shifting gears, and we're going to go over and do a flow now. But this concept, prevents people from seeing the items in the list or library that are not approved. So you might want, if you want to control what people can see in here and not let them see things that haven't been approved or that have been rejected, that is what this setting is good for. So you can still use the approvals action in a flow, and there's the ability to run it in conjunction and have it tie into the content approval. But having just an approval action in a flow doesn't do this thing where it hides the items that aren't approved. Does that make sense? So that's what you're adding to your solution, is the ability to control what people see and have access to in the list or library. Okay, so now we'll go over to Power Automate. And we'll create something, skip the tutorial. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I will create a flow that will send something for approval. And I'll just do an approval, a basic one that will let somebody manually kick it off and also pick who the approver is. So I'm gonna do flow button for mobile and add an input of a person. So I'll say approver. Who is the approver? Who should approve this? And then if they want to send a message to the approver when they're kicking it off for approval. And this part is pretty basic, but the magic is going to be when you run it in conjunction with the content approval. So they're going to be, oh, you know what? I don't want to be using the manually trigger a flow trigger. I want to use the one that's for a selected item in SharePoint, because I have another thing that I want to show you in a minute of how to create that button in the library to kick off the approval. So I'm going to cancel this thing. And the easiest way to create one that uses that for a selected item trigger in SharePoint is just to go to the list itself and to go to this automate. Make sure I'm logged in as the right user. Nope, I'm not logged in as an admin. And go to the automate and go to the to that little panel. Hold on a second. All right. Integrate. Sorry. They split it into two things, automate and integrate. Create a flow. So go, if you want to add the for a selected item action in a list or library, the easiest way to create that flow and have it work correctly, for some reason it's buggy if you don't start from here, is to go create a flow and then choose show more. And then you go down to the one that says for the selected item. So complete a custom action for the selected item. So that means I'll be able to click that row in the list or library and be able to have that kick the flow off. So I do want to do those inputs real quick in here. So it's already got my site address and my list name in here. So I want to do the inputs. So I'll say approver and message. That other trigger that I created a second ago, you wouldn't be able to kick that off straight from in the library. So that's why I went over to this other trigger. So for that item and approve, I'll go to my approval action, approvals, start and wait for approval, and it's creating that for me. And I'll just say first to respond. That means I could send it to several people if I wanted to, and just whoever approves it, then it's considered approved. And then I'll say approve. And then what am I approving? I'll just put the title of whatever that item is. And then who am I assigning it to? I'm assigning it to this approver field that they're going to be filling in as when they trigger the flow. And then the details are going to be is going to be that message that they type in when they kick the flow off. And the item link, I'm just going to use that link to item column so that when they get the approval, they'll know which item to go look at. And then what do I want the item link description to be? I'll just say I think there's a destination. Now I'm just going to use the title. Keep it simple. And then who's the requester? I like to make the requester be the person who kicked off the flow in the first place. All right, so now it's going to start and wait for an approval. And then what happens? So you want it to write back to the SharePoint list. This is where the magic comes in. This is where your content approval action comes into play. So I'm going to go add a new action. I'll say content approval. And it's called set content approval status. And I need to tell it what site I'm using. I'm using this Power Hour site. Let me just copy that. Power Hour. And then my travel request is my list. And then which item am I setting my content approval on? That's that same item that I clicked on. And then my action, the first thing you have to do is submit. So this is where it's tricky. It's not the most obvious thing, is you have to do this submit action. And then after you do the submit action, then that's when you set the content approval to whatever they decided. So then I can say content approval. So I do another set content approval status. Power Hour, library name. I'm looking at your notes real quick to see if there's anything pertinent going on. Oh, okay, you use it to, you use it, somebody says they use it in conjunction with major and minor versions in a library. That's a whole other solution. So yeah, we'll see if we have time to cover that one, because that one's really interesting. Okay, same ID. Either of these would be the same item, this dynamic data here. Here's the trick. Okay, so I don't want to automatically, let me rename these. I don't want to automatically just set it to approved or rejected here. But what I can do is I can just say whatever they decide when they approve it up here, that's what it's going to write to the content approval status. So I don't even have to do a condition. I don't have to say if they approve, it goes down this path. If they reject, it goes down this other path. I can just do a single action, choose to a custom, let's see, enter custom value is what you want to do right here. And then I need to do the outcome. Just search for outcome. There we go. Okay, so that is the outcome from whatever they decided when they got sent the approval, and that outcome gets placed in here. Now the E tag is also, that's required. If you run this without the E tag, it's going to give you an error. So the E tag is the reason that we needed to have this previous action. And because in order to set the content approval status, you have to fill in the E tag here. So then also the comments, I'm going to want to put the comments, if they make any comments when they do that content approval up here, I probably want to put those comments down here. I'm going to do that in a minute though, because that throws a monkey wrench in everything and makes it seem way more complicated than it is. So I'm going to do that in a second. I'm going to run it first though. Oh, I didn't give it a better name. So let me give this a better name. Approve travel. Okay, so I'll call approve travel, save it, and now it is, okay, so let's try running that. So I'll go ahead and refresh this. So now I've got a couple of pending items. So I'll go ahead here and select an item and then go to automate. And then here is where I can kick off my approved travel. It's in the list. I can get to that from the automate in the toolbar up there too. So again, this is just, it's going to pull up this panel over on the right. I'm going to try and have time to show you how to create a pretty button in in the list itself to pull up this panel so that users don't have to know to navigate through that whole big menu that I just did. Then the first time a user kicks it off, it's going to have this screen that makes sure that they understand they're sending their credentials to it. All right, so then here's the approver. So I made the approver and the message required. So my approver is going to be, I'm going to send it to that other account, that external account that I just showed you that I made have the ability to be an approver. And hey, please approve. All right, so then it kicked off the flow. So now what's happening? All right, I'll go log in as this other user here. And oh, you know what I just realized? That having an external user is not going to be a good example. I need to just send it to myself, because if I get an approval as an external user and I try to go to that approvals interface, it's not going to let me have access to it. So if you have external users in your solution, that approvals action is not, I shouldn't have, that's not a user that I should have selected when I was picking the approver. But because external users just can't be used when you're using that particular action in a flow. So let me just go, I'll kick one off with a different user. Sorry about that. It's good to know though, right? So let me, I'm this user, this item, approve travel, and I just need to send it to a user that's internal for this tenant that I'm using. That's my admin account, sorry. Okay, then I run flow, and then okay, it popped up in Teams. So it says Laura Rogers sent you a request. And I'm not sure why it's taking so long. There we go. Got it. Okay, so here's the link to my SharePoint list item if I want to go look at the thing that I'm approving. And then here's my approval, comments, test, and I can click approve and reject. So I'll just click approve. And then it's that item in the list. Let's go look at that item. This item called test is the one that I kicked it off on. So let's go look at the flow and see what happened. It succeeded. Okay, so it set the content approval status to submit. And then it set the content approval status to approve. And let me go over here and look, it says approved. So it refreshed itself and it says it's approved. So that's how you tie together the action, the approval action in a flow with the actual content approval so that it all works in conjunction. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense as to why I use both of them and not just the approvals action. Hold on, let me see. What is an Etag? Etag, Joelle, have you ever dealt with Etags? I think it is basically like a GUID that tells it what version of the file is on. It's just basically like a big long cryptic number.
Yeah, I don't even really have dealt with them because I know that the terms in the term store have like Etags that like represent, you know what I mean? That have like a GUID that represents them.
Yeah, it represents
I think it's something similar.
Yeah. So what I've had happen before in the past is I created a flow that I had set content approval status to submit up above the starting wait for an approval. And then if someone edited the item in between it, the approval kicking off and it getting down here, it would actually break because the E tag that it was getting in this action when it was above, when this thing setting it to submit was above, ended up being different because someone changed the item, which changed the E tag. So then that very last action would break because the E tag was different. So that's why I have the approval here, then it's setting it to submit and getting the e-tag all in one fell swoop with then setting the content approval status because it, if someone had edited in between, it was having problems. Now, if you wanted to have external users approving things, you would not want to use this approval action. You would probably want to use an action called send an email with options. And send an email with options just kind of like that old school Outlook setting you used to be able to, you could turn on that give people a buttons in the email that lets them vote on something. It just gives them buttons in an email to approve or reject. It doesn't have that comments functionality. Now, I'll add one more thing with the that content approval, the approver comments, and putting those in here. So what I'm going to do is the approver comments, Flow sees it as an array, which is really annoying. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to initialize a variable, var comments, and make it a string. And then for comments. And then after the approval happens, I'm going to set my variable. This is if I want to have their comments from their approval show up in that column in SharePoint for the content approval comments. Set variable, var comments, and I'm setting it to whatever comments they made. Responses comments, comments added by the approver. Okay, see what it did? So Flow sees that comments field as a list of things, like potentially an approval action could have multiple comments from multiple approvers. So it sees that data as a list of stuff. So whenever I want to put those comments in something or use them somewhere else, anywhere in my flow, it immediately puts that action in a loop. So I didn't want to put my set content approval status in a loop by putting the comments directly in here. So I set it in a variable so then I can just nice and neatly place my var comments here. Another thing to note about the approval action is if you have it, if you're sending it to assigning it to multiple people, then what's going to happen is if you have, so right now I just have to first respond, which is just, it's going to give me one answer, approve, reject. But if you have if you've selected the one where everyone must respond, the data is not going to be nice and neat. So this data, if it's just one person, it's just going to say the word approve or the word reject, and that will fit nice and neatly in the action that it expects right here. But if you have multiple people doing approvals and you're going to have like approve, comma, reject, comma, approve, comma, approve, comma, approve, you'll have like this comma delimited list of what all the people's outcomes were. And that is not going to work well with this action that's just wants one thing. So just kind of keep that in mind, that if you have a bunch of people with different responses, you'll have to do something different. Let's see. I also had, so that's how you integrate it with Flow. And if you did an action that says, if you did the email with options action and you wanted to apply their outcome response directly into this action like this, you would just have to use those exact words, approve, reject, and not have, make sure it's not spelled incorrectly or you're not using like maybe or something else in there. It has to be those exact words so that it fits with, it has to be the word approve or the word reject in here. So, oops, let's see, I messed that up. So my action was my outcome. Oops. Put that back in there. Okay, so that's how that goes. All right, now, now if I did one and in the approval action, if I made a comment, it would just go straight into the content approval status and it would go straight into this column. All right, so another thing that I want to show you is that column formatting concept. So I wrote a blog post about this. Let's see, where is that? get you all a link to that. Formatting. SharePoint conditional formatting. No, it's my one about the button. The button in the SharePoint list to trigger Power Automate, which is my the most popular blog post ever. I wrote it a couple of years ago, and it still stays the most popular post. I'll put that in the resources. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is there's code in this post that's got the exact column that I'm using, this moderation status column. So I'm just going to use that because this system name of this approval status column is called, it's got it up here, underscore moderation status. So that's what I'm using in the code in this blog post that I'm going to just copy and paste in here. So what you'll want though, in order to have a button to trigger the approval, and so the goal here now is for people to not have to go click an item, click the ellipsis, go to more, go to approve and reject, or if you're going straight to approve and reject, actually you don't want them to have to go, since we created this flow, you don't want them to have to go to this approved travel thing, going down this little breadcrumb trail. You want them to just be able to have a button on the row. So that's what we're solving for now, is that users are never going to find this having to go through these multiple menus, but it's much easier if they just can click a button, right? So that's probably why that's a really popular post, because people like to give people easy buttons to quickly accomplish something in that particular row that they've selected. So instead of having them have to do this, though, I want to give them a button, but where am I going to give them a button? So you could create a button that's on an existing column, but I'm just going to make this easy, and I'm just going to create a new column, and I'm just going to make the column be where the button is. So I could call this column button or something like that. I'll just call it approval button. And it's just not going to have anything in the column. It's just going to have the button that they click. Super simple. Okay, so there's my approval button column. And then I go to my column settings, format this column. And that's where I need to use this code. So I go to advanced mode. And then I'm going to copy the code directly off of my blog post. See how well that goes. Oh yeah, see what it does with the quotes? That's so annoying. I'm gonna go and put that in Notepad. See what you have to do with these quotes every time you copy and paste for some reason. I think I have one that I already copied it correctly. So let me find that. Any questions? Where is that? That is in my Flow Power Automate Advanced class. Yeah, put that in here. The formatting. Here it is. Let me grab that. See if it copies better out of PowerPoint. No, it didn't. It still puts all these weird characters in there. I'm sorry. I should have done this ahead of time. I have to do like a find and replace, this little thing right here. You all are following along, right? There we go. Find that and replace it, and then I have to take this last one and find it. Oops. Copy. Place there. It's the quotes. Okay, so select all, copy. It likes that much better. Okay, save. All right, so now, oh, look at that. So now one of them says pending. So now that's the logic that I created. So when it says pending, that's when the approval button is going to show. So let me just edit one again real quick so that it shows as pending again. All right. Okay. So that's the logic of this code that I just put in here. And I'll show you the slide real quick. This is out of my advanced Power Automate class. So this button, it should only be visible if the content approval status is set to pending. So use this JSON code. So my column system name is moderation status. So if you have a different column that you want to do your logic based on, then that's where you change the column name. And blue is, I want this to show when my status is this, and I want this to be visible when the status is pending. So this is where I'm using the visibility section of the code to make the button visible or hidden. So I'm just saying if the moderation status is pending, I want it to be visible, otherwise hidden. So that's the logic behind making this button show. And then in the button, I need it to execute the right flow. So this flow has a GUID to it. So my flow's GUID is this thing right here. So I'll go ahead, not the /details, just this cryptic thing right here. Copy that. And then I need to put that in that code so it'll work correctly. So I'll go back to format this column and let's see if let's expand that. There we go. So here's the ID of the flow, and that's where that goes. Okay. So now have a couple of things that need to be approved, and I'll go ahead and click get approved, and then that's what pulls up this panel. So then that's where I can put myself in here. I'll do another one, and this one I'll make a comment and we'll see the comment go back. So that's this item called test that I'm running this on. So it started my flow, and then it's going to sends me an approval in Teams, and it also sends it to me in an email. So I'll just say good stuff and approve. And then I've also got, let's see, it says final status approved. It sends me another Teams notification. Yep, all right, cool. And then let me refresh my list. And then here is the same item. See, it says test and it says good stuff. And that's the thing so it took my comments from the approval action, the approval I did in Teams, and put that in here and set it to approved automatically. Do we have any questions that you noticed, Joelle? Let's see. I gotta go find it. Oh, another blog post. Okay. Oh, the Etag information. Thank you. All right. Yes, Ed, Etag has to do with versioning. All right, cool. Now there's one more thing that I wanted to point out to you all, and that is just this weird setting that exists having to do with approvals. So it's kind of dumb, and it's not something that you need to use, but you might come across it and you might wonder what it is or wonder how it's used, having to do with content approval. And that is going to be when you go to this Power Automate, integrate and Power Automate, and choose configure flows. And that says, do you want approvals in this library? And it's on. And if I change this to say request sign off, what is that going to do to my content approval that I just turned on? So I changed it to request sign off, and what does that do? Okay, so I'll just create a test request sign off. And it basically turned off. Let's see. Oh yeah, no, let's see. Yeah, it turned off the content approval. So I created a new item and it's not requiring approval anymore. So what it's doing is it's expecting that you want to use this other thing instead, and that's going to be this automate request sign off built-in flow. And all this does is a completely not configurable at all, and it is just a built-in out-of-the-box flow that just lets you decide who to send something to quote request sign off. And it doesn't hide and show things like the content approval does. It's just like a super, super simple out-of-the-box approval process. I'll just say Joelle. So that is a built-in thing that adds this sign-off status column here. And that, again, it just puts data in a column and it doesn't hide and show things like the content approval does. So what happens if I go here to integrate, power automate, configure flows, and I just turn all this off? Then if I don't want people to see the little option here to request sign, let me go see if the end user can see it. Refresh this. So now end users don't see a request sign off option when they click this little automate option there. See that it hides it. So if you are not even using content approvals, if you're not doing anything with them, you just don't want users to see request sign off because that's just a built-in flow that exists everywhere. If you don't want them to see it, you can turn that setting off. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to integrate, power automate, configure flows, and go back to have my content approval back. Oh, and I broke something, of course. I'll probably just have to go straight to the, I'm logged in as the end user. End users with that setting, they're presented with making it look like they can change something, but then when they try to actually change it, it gives them an error, which I don't feel like they should do that. I feel like Microsoft should make it so that you can't even see this option here at all if you don't have the ability to change it. But I'll go ahead and put there. Now I've got content approval turned back on. And it's just another way to turn it on. Test, change. All right, and now I get my button back, and because content approval is turned back on. Okay, so, oh yeah, well, Charles asking about the draft version approvals. Technically the hour's over, but I'll show you real quick what he's talking about. You all feel free to play around with this and try it out if you want, but you can go to a library, and when you go to library settings in the versioning, you can do create major and minor versions. That way people can have drafts and they can work on things and then publish them. But you can also use that in conjunction with content approval, so that you would kind of have to have multiple steps. If you had a very formal approval process and publishing process, you would have multiple steps that they would be doing. So they would be editing a file, it would be in draft mode, and then you would also have to get it published and approved. So that's just like a lot of work for, but again, a very formal process, a lot of work for the people involved in the process, but it makes it nice and neat and concise so that end users visiting that library are only going to see the things that are final version and that have been approved. So if you ever have a formal process, I keep saying that, then you might want to double down and do both of those settings. So Joelle, have you ever used that, those two things in conjunction, the content approval and the draft and published versions in a library? Do people still do that?
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I haven't worked on something like that in a while, but I have done that, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times people just want things moved to a different location when it gets approved, and they like to just have like one big messy library where they can do all their drafts. And but yeah, in my experience, more people want to have the file moved when it's published to a different site than because I feel like the users and the power users and the people working on the files don't trust that what they're seeing is different than what the end user's seeing. So it's harder to wrap their head around what the end users are seeing when you're seeing all the messiness in the draft. But you feel like maybe the end users can see that too, even though this, per the settings, they can't really. But anyway, to me, it's all psychological that people want to physically see the file in a different place when it's the approved version. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. All right. That was fun. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. That wraps it up. You can go to iwmentor.com and go to the schedule button at the top of the screen to see when we're having our next Power Hour. It's most Wednesdays at 11 Central. We're not having one next week because next week is it's our interactive advanced Power Apps and Power Automate class online. So you can check that out at iwmentor.com. And that is listed on the schedule page. You can take just the Power Apps portion or just the Power Automate portion or both. So, and you can read all about what an interactive class is. All right. And I will see you all next time. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Joelle.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.